I knew something was off the moment Devin called Lane's documentation habits adorable. That man tracked firewall changes the way surgeons track heartbeats. Precise, methodical, obsessed with timestamps and verified chains. But Devin was all charm and shortcuts. The kind of guy who wears a startup hoodie to a federal contract meeting and thinks confidence can outcode compliance. First week on the job, he leaned over Lane's desk with a grin and said, "You know this isn't the CIA, right? You can stop logging every sneeze in triplicate." Lane didn't even look up, just clicked something, typed a note and muttered, "Q2 log, Naja 3342, unauthorized access attempt, flagged." For a minute, I actually thought Lane was going to be the one pushed out quietly. He never went to happy hour, never joined the Slack threads about crypto trends or hot takes on Taylor Swift's economic impact. He just worked. And he worked like he knew something the rest of us didn't. I once caught him emailing legal about a change of custody update on our internal audit server. It wasn't even out of scope for his role, but he wanted it on paper. Devin laughed it off in a staff meeting, said Lane was paranoid with a badge. But I remember Lane's reply clear as day. "Paranoia's how you survive breach investigations. If you've made it this far, do me a solid. Tap that subscribe button and like the video. 97% of people listen without subscribing, and it really helps the team keep digging up stories like this. Thank you. Seriously." Anyway, when the new leadership came in, the energy changed. The word streamline got thrown around like it was holy scripture. Lean ops, cut overhead, optics over caution. All the phrases that make people like Lane twitch behind the eyes. I'd pass him in the hallway and see the Q2 control logs still open on his screen, side by side with a live encryption map of our infrastructure. He never said much, but once he asked me if anyone had confirmed the new attestations for our federal contracts. I hadn't even heard we'd skipped a quarterly one. That was the start of it, really. Devin started removing redundant friction points, which apparently meant anything that made his job harder to explain in one PowerPoint slide. Lane pushed back, politely but firmly. He submitted a written request asking Devin to acknowledge, on record, that certain security flags were being overridden. Devin refused, said it would create liability. Lane just nodded, like he'd been expecting that answer. It wasn't long before HR called Lane in for a routine alignment chat. They used that voice. The one where you know a decision's already been made and your input is just a formality to keep things polite. He walked out with a sealed envelope, no drama, just a nod to me in the hallway. But I caught a glimpse of his screen before he shut it down. His last entry, custodial variance unresolved, awaiting final transfer authorization. We all thought he was overreacting. We were wrong. Devin called Lane a liability in front of the VCs like it was a joke. Like mocking the guy who kept our entire federal compliance posture intact was some kind of flex. "We've recently streamlined our back-end ops," he said, gesturing with his stupid ringed fingers. "Our previous systems guy was thorough, almost obsessively so. We've since shifted to a more agile approach, less noise, more velocity." The investors chuckled politely. One of them, a guy with glacier blue eyes and 2 clean shoes, raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. I saw Lane's jaw shift just slightly, but he said nothing. Just kept his arms folded, holding the slim black folio he always brought to briefings like it was body armor. After the meeting, Lane didn't come back to his desk. He didn't send any follow-up emails, no Slack pings, just silence. An hour later, the whisper floated down from HR like a draft through a broken window. Lane's been let go. Not fired, not terminated. Let go. Like a helium balloon someone just released into the sky, too expensive to tie down. I walked by the HR office and caught the end of the conversation. The head of HR, Anne, smiling that tight, rehearsed smile, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "We appreciate your attention to detail, Lane, truly. But as we evolve, we need more flexible infrastructure support. You'll receive 3 months severance and continuation of benefits. We just ask that you return all proprietary materials and access devices before 5 p.m. today." Lane didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't even blink. He took the envelope, opened it, scanned the contents like he was reviewing a checklist, and then placed it neatly in his folio. "One last thing," he said. He wanted written confirmation of the Q2 compliance log custody transfer. Since I'll no longer be designated custodian, he added, I assume the encryption key custody will need to be updated too. Anne blinked like he'd spoken Klingon. That's not necessary. It will handle it. He didn't respond, just nodded once, tight, and walked out without another word. That evening, I saw him by the freight elevator. He wasn't carrying much, just his folio, a sealed envelope, and a small USB key on a braided cord. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and just chose not to say anything. There was something in his eyes, though. Not anger, not sadness, just focus. Like a man who had written a plan on stone and was now watching everyone else try to erase it with dry erase markers. Word spread fast. Devon celebrated the org reshuffle with pizza and beer in the conference room. One team, one dream, he said, holding up his slice like it was a sword. People laughed, toasted, moved on, but I noticed something that made my stomach turn. Lane's terminal hadn't been wiped. His system status was marked inactive, but not reassigned. His access logs hadn't been archived, just frozen. Like the system didn't quite know what to do with him now that he was gone, but not gone. And someone in legal forwarded me a message by mistake. Meant for the CTO, I think. It was Lane's final email. Subject: custodial termination, unverified path. No one replied. No one acknowledged it. And that's when I realized he didn't need to fight. He'd already set the fuse. The next morning, Lane showed up in a pressed gray shirt like nothing had happened. No boxes, no panic, just that quiet, eerie calm he wore like a second skin. He stopped by his desk, clocked in, if you can believe that, and laid out 3 things in a perfect row. A single-page checklist with initials in blue ink down the side, the company-issued USB security token, and a small black envelope marked Legal Compliance Custody. Nobody knew what to do with him. HR thought he'd already left. It assumed he was still being off-boarded. Devon wasn't even in the office. He'd gone downtown to celebrate streamlining operations with the finance lead and some investor-adjacent consultant named Bryce. The rest of us just watched from our monitors like it was a nature documentary, the last known sighting of a dying species. Lane took his time, cleared his cache, double-checked something in the endpoint logging system. Then he sent one email. 1. No all-staff message, no dramatic goodbye. Just a single encrypted message addressed to legal, CC'd to an internal compliance inbox most people forgot existed, and, for reasons I still don't fully understand, copied to an external regulatory Dropbox listed under a federal contract header. The subject line read, Custodial Termination, Unverified Path. The body of the message was exactly 3 lines long. Per my offboarding checklist, Q2 log files remain under dual key lock until proper custodial confirmation is received. No attestation transfer has been acknowledged. Chain integrity is pending validation. That was it. No signature, no flare, just the digital equivalent of locking the vault door and placing the key on a ledge no one could reach. I asked one of the junior paralegals later if legal opened it. She shook her head. Nah, they get those weird encrypted files from IT all the time. Probably just some audit nonsense. She laughed. Besides, he's gone now. What's he gonna do? Send us a compliance haiku? But that envelope he left? The one marked for legal? That wasn't a haiku. It contained a printed version of the checklist with every step initialed and time-stamped. Log closure, encryption status, attestation pending, custody unverified. A single sticky note was attached to the bottom corner. It read, if compliance isn't inconvenient, it's probably fake. LW. I don't know when it hit me. Maybe that night, maybe a week later, but there was a difference between getting fired and choosing not to stay. Lane had already done the math. He knew what would happen the minute Devon overrode those security controls and smiled for the VCs. He wasn't fighting the layoff because he wasn't planning to be here when the roof caved in. He was already on the outside, waiting. And the worst part? We all thought we won. The office was quiet that afternoon. His desk sat empty, untouched. Someone eventually took the chair. HR recycled the monitor. But every now and then, I'd catch myself glancing at his screen, remembering the shape of his logs, the endless cascade of system entries, timestamps, user traces, exit tokens. Devin started referring to that quarter as clean, said the logs were handled. Nobody asked who handled them. Nobody noticed that the encryption keys hadn't been updated. Lane left without a trace, but not without control. He didn't need to shout. He just needed silence long enough for the system to realize it had stopped breathing. 3 weeks later, Devin was strutting down the hallway like he'd personally invented cloud computing. The company had just announced a $42 million funding milestone, and the press release had his name in bold right under the headline. Devin Shaw, CTO, leads strategic modernization effort. There was even a photo, him in a conference room, gesturing at a whiteboard with one of those smug, mid-thought smirks. I stared at it too long. Couldn't decide what was worse, the fact that it worked, or the fact that Lane was nowhere in that story. People bought the narrative. Product teams were giddy. Marketing booked a rooftop bar for the celebration. Even legal was relaxed. I heard one of the paralegals joking about finally cleaning out the compliance archive now that the neurotic guy was gone. Then, without any warning, a federal compliance officer showed up in our lobby. Not a call, not an email, an actual in-person visit. ID badge clipped, laptop bag, neutral tone. She asked to speak with our internal audit lead. The receptionist stammered and buzzed legal. That's when the first hairline fracture appeared. They needed Q2 control logs, full attestation, under the federal contract Lane had flagged before. Something about a scheduled review tied to cybersecurity posture for ongoing eligibility. Nothing urgent, just standard documentation review. Devin didn't even blink when they told him. Tell it to pull the logs, zip 'em, we're good. But we weren't. The first IT guy who tried came back 15 minutes later, pale and shaky. The folder's locked, he muttered. I mean, it's there, but it's encrypted. We don't have the keys. Devin frowned. What do you mean we don't have the keys? Lane handed everything over. Except he didn't. Not really. Another engineer jumped in, tried using the standard rotation credentials. Access denied. They checked the vault where Lane stored his compliance archive. The file names were all there, but every single one was locked under dual auth encryption. One key was retired. The other didn't exist in the system anymore. Devin tried to play it cool. Okay, reset the custody chain. Restore from backup. More silence. Backups showed the same thing. Encrypted containers, locked access, and an audit trail that ended the exact moment Lane's user access was marked inactive. By noon, the office smelled like panic. Not outright yelling, just a heavy, throat-tight tension. Legal huddled in the glass room with IT whispering. Compliance started rechecking quarterly entries. I saw someone digging through hard copies in the archive closet, flipping through physical binders like we'd been hacked by ghosts. Then someone found it. Buried in an internal audit system Lane had built years ago was a single red flag, dated the day after his layoff. Custody transfer. Incomplete change of custody signature, not verified custodial confirmation. Pending. The timestamp was June 27th, the day after HR said goodbye. He hadn't transferred anything, and the system knew. Worse, so did the feds now. The compliance officer didn't raise her voice. She just pointed at the screen and asked, "Who's the designated custodian listed here?" No one answered, because Lane's name was still there. Even Devin, for once, had nothing to say. They cracked open Lane's final email like it was some forgotten relic. Legal hadn't even looked at it when it came in. They'd flagged it as routine off-boarding noise and filed it under pending archive. But now, with a federal officer calmly requesting system integrity proof and the CTO blinking like a man who just realized the breaks were decorative, they finally opened it. I was there. Not in the room, but close enough. You could feel the shift. It was like someone had flipped a breaker in the floor. The buzz of whispers cut out and everything slowed to silence. I watched Jenna, our general counsel, reading the email. Her face didn't move for a full 30 seconds. No blinking, no breathing, just eyes locked on the screen. Then she sat back, looked across the glass conference table at Devin, and mouthed 2 words that hit like a bullet. "Oh no." Devin tried to laugh it off. "What? It's just logs. We'll recompile. It can recreate the control stack." Jenna didn't even look at him. She turned her screen around so the compliance officer could see. The officer leaned in, adjusted her glasses, and read the one line Lane had buried in the body of that encrypted message. Unverified attestation voids report authenticity. 12 words. That's all it took to set fire to the room. Because that one sentence didn't just point to a technical error, it invalidated the entire attestation record under federal review. And worse, Lane had CC'd the message to an external Dropbox tagged with the contract number. He'd logged it with the actual regulators. We weren't just missing logs. We were sitting in breach territory. Devin turned gray. Wait, why would he send it to them? That's not procedure. Neither is firing your only custodian without a signed transfer. Jenna snapped. She scrolled further, eyes darting. Lane had documented everything. Not in dramatic prose, just raw, surgical facts. Audit trail numbers, verification gaps. He'd highlighted every override Devin made, every time he'd asked for written confirmation and was ignored. Each request was logged with timestamps, attachments, chain entries. It was all there, wrapped in calm, devastating clarity. I peeked through the glass as the compliance officer took notes. Her face didn't show emotion. She just nodded once, tapped her pen on the table, and said, "We'll need to file a preliminary breach review. The chain of custody is non-verifiable." Devin exploded. "You're taking his word over ours." She didn't flinch. "I'm taking his documentation." There it was. Lane hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't thrown punches or made a scene. He'd just done what he always did. Wrote it down, double-signed it, and left a trail so clean you could audit it in your sleep. Legal started spinning, drafting internal statements, trying to contact contract counsel. Someone in compliance dry-heaved in the bathroom. It tried to decrypt the files again and failed. And somewhere, probably sipping black coffee and reviewing a packet of federal contractor standards for fun, Lane Whitaker sat in perfect silence. We had mocked him for caring too much. Now, he held the only key to keeping us alive. The CEO came storming in like he'd just been told someone stole his yacht. Tie half-tied, Bluetooth in his ear, voice already 2 octaves louder than usual. "Fix it," he barked at Devin. "I don't care how, just fix it. Tell me this is just IT drama and not a goddamn federal issue." Devin, for once, didn't have a punchline. He was sweating, hands twitching, trying to act busy while his laptop spun circles, trying to brute force decrypt a folder that might as well have been sealed with blood magic. I stood behind Legal's desk pretending to be invisible, but I caught the panic in his screen reflection. Lines of red text flashing. Key not found, access denied. "Can we restore from archive?" the CEO asked, pacing. "Tell me Lane didn't booby-trap the whole damn system." Jenna spoke for the first time in 20 minutes. "The archives are exact copies, locked containers, no key, no access." "So reset the key," he snapped. That's when the junior compliance analyst, poor guy looked like he'd aged 10 years since lunch, murmured from the corner, "It's not a system key. Lane didn't use internal credentials." Everyone turned. He cleared his throat. He used a separate token. Personal credential vault, air-gapped, not on the network. Devin turned on him like a vulture. "You're telling me we let a private key manage a federal compliance log?" "He was the custodian," the kid replied, almost apologetically. "You never reassigned the chain." That was it. The moment it all cracked. Because without that token, the logs weren't just locked. They were legally non-existent. And under the cybersecurity maturity model protocols baked into our contract, that meant we were now officially out of compliance. Not hypothetically. Not possibly. Officially. Jenna looked like she was going to pass out. She clicked through a few screens, then slowly turned her laptop toward the CEO. Lane's name had just been added to the Federal Consultation Registry. Advising entity, L. Whitaker, External Compliance Consultant. "What the hell is this?" the CEO asked. She didn't sugarcoat it. "Lane's consulting, with the regulators, as of last Friday." I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Devin sank into a chair, jaw slack. The CEO just stood there, blinking like he couldn't understand the words. "He was the only one who knew how the system worked," Jenna said quietly. "We fired him, ignored every documented handoff request. He warned us." Someone in the back actually said it out loud. "We're screwed." There was a long silence. Then the CEO muttered, "Call him." No one moved. I said, "Call him." Still nothing. Because what do you say to the man you dismissed for being too careful? The man you mocked for taking his job too seriously? The man who asked twice for verification and was ignored like a ghost? You call him. But not as a boss, as a beggar. And Lane? He wasn't picking up. It took them 2 full days to get him on a call. Not because Lane was dodging, he just wasn't rushing. He let them marinate. Let the silence stretch until it started sounding like consequence. When he finally did reply, it wasn't to Jenna, not to the CEO, not even to Devin. He responded to the federal compliance officer, who then forwarded the reply to our legal team like a formal memo. The subject line was classic Lane, response to inquiry, conditional assistance proposal, no emojis, no warm greetings. Just 4 bullet points. My services are available at a consulting rate of $450 an hour. Full legal indemnity must be granted via signed agreement prior to engagement. A public statement correcting the narrative of my performance-based departure must be issued and acknowledged by senior leadership. Devin Shaw must formally resign from his role as CTO before any credentials are restored. Silence again. Deafening. The kind that vibrates in your molars. Jenna read it out loud in the boardroom. You could practically see the oxygen evacuate Devin's lungs when she hit point 4. He actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. "This is extortion." "No," she said coldly. "This is leverage. The kind you build when you're ignored, disrespected, and still do your job better than everyone else in the building." The CEO stared at the message for what felt like an hour. Then he turned to Devin and muttered, "You lied about everything." Devin's hands were shaking. I was trying to move fast, speed over. "Don't," Jenna snapped. "He has documentation. Every override you made, every exception you pushed through, every compliance flag you dismissed, it's all archived. He made a backup outside the system, verified, time-stamped." That was the kill shot, because Lane hadn't just left. He'd built a forensic memory palace on the way out. And now that regulators were involved, that archive wasn't just damning, it was radioactive. The board met in private that night. We weren't in the room, but we didn't have to be. You could feel the walls pulsing with ego and desperation. Save the company or protect Devin's image. It wasn't even a choice anymore. By morning, a Slack message popped into the Attorney General channel. Today, Devin Shaw has chosen to step down from his role as CTO effective immediately. We thank him for his contributions and wish him well in his future endeavors. No one reacted. No emojis, no replies. Half an hour later, Lane's name appeared on the internal email list again, this time with a new title. L. Whitaker, External Compliance Consultant, Federal Liaison. I caught a glimpse of the call they set up. Federal officer on one screen, Jenna and the CEO on another, and Lane's quiet face backlit by what looked like a home office stacked with file boxes and hardbound policy guides. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply entered the decryption key, verified the logs, and walked them through every single step they had failed to take. Calm, precise, surgical. He was still Lane, just no longer ours. The moment Lane typed the final decryption key, the screen blinked once, then the logs bloomed open like a scar finally splitting at the stitch. Timestamps, access trails, system flags, all perfectly intact. Nothing missing. Not a bite out of place. The federal compliance officer didn't say a word. She just nodded, the kind of nod that means we know who saved you. Lane's voice, when he spoke, was as calm as ever. As you'll see, Q2 logs are complete through June 30th. Chain of custody is restored as of 8:42 a.m. today via limited credential reactivation under indemnified conditions. The CEO muttered a stiff thank you from the other screen, but Lane didn't acknowledge it. He was already moving to the next folder, verifying his subdirectories. He didn't waste time rubbing their noses in it. That was the thing about Lane. He never wanted credit, just correctness. Even now, with everyone watching, he didn't crow. He didn't preen. He just worked. Because that's what professionals do when the people who humiliated them come crawling back to survive. The logs passed every check. Lane's encryption schema, which Devin once called paranoid overkill, turned out to exceed baseline CMMC protocols by 3 layers. The compliance officer raised her eyebrows once, scrolled through the packet, and said, "These controls are more rigorous than required." "Who implemented them?" Jenna didn't hesitate. "Lane Whitaker. He designed our original architecture." That was the first time I saw Lane react. Just a breath, one small pause. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes loosened. An hour later, the internal systems updated. His name, L. Whitaker, was listed on our compliance architecture page again, this time under a new designation, Compliance Architect Emeritus, Advisor of Record, Federal Contracts. And just like that, the man we called paranoid was the reason we hadn't lost our federal clearance. HR removed Devin's Slack account quietly. No final message, no farewell Zoom. His access died at 6:13 a.m. Systems were rekeyed. His name erased from CTO dashboards. Some of the junior devs joked in DMs that Devin had been shadow banned from the company. But the damage he caused? That stuck. 3 engineers were placed under audit review. Legal issued a statement to the board admitting failure to execute proper chain of custody protocol. One investor pulled back temporarily, and for weeks after, every all-hands meeting had an unspoken air of, "We got lucky, and we didn't deserve to." And Lane? He didn't come back in person. His work was remote, by contract. But his presence lingered. Systems started running smoother, logs updated cleaner. Even the interface looked different, like the infrastructure itself remembered who built it. Sometimes I'd catch a junior team member reading through the archived checklist he left behind. "Why did he track everything?" they'd ask. And I'd just say, "Because someday you might need it." The truth was, Lane never needed a revenge arc. He didn't want anyone to burn. He just wanted the damn systems to work. And in the end, the only person who ever actually did their job was the one they couldn't replace. 3 months later, the systems audit felt more like a ceremony than a test. The regulator walked through the office like a surgeon reviewing old scars, calm and clinical, but with a quiet respect. Things had changed. The logs were pristine. The attestation chain had been rebuilt, mirrored, verified, redundantly cross-signed. Lane's protocols were everywhere now. Templates, drop paths, red flag triggers. The kind of back-end discipline that doesn't make headlines but keeps empires from quietly bleeding out. She paused in the server room, scrolling through the Q-log interface. "Solid work," she said to the new CTO, acting CTO, since no one had officially filled Devin's shoes. Just a rotating panel of technical leads trying not to break anything. Then she asked the question, "Who maintains the Q-logs now?" For a second, no one said anything. Then someone gestured toward the far wall, newly painted, freshly lit, and there it was, a matte steel plaque. Minimalist. No logo, no branding. Chain of custody begins with paranoia. Lane Whitaker, 2016-2025. The regulator looked at it for a long time. She didn't smile, didn't scoff. She just nodded once, the same way you do when you realize the person you underestimated turned out to be the reason your foundation never cracked. We don't talk about Lane much anymore, not directly, but his systems run everything now. His checklists are policy. His change of custody process is built into every new onboarding package. Nobody skips attestations. Nobody overrides protocol without a paper trail. And sometimes, when someone new joins the team and starts questioning why everything is so rigid, so excessive, they point to the plaque. They tell the story, quietly but with reverence. He never wanted to be a hero. He never asked for loyalty. He just wanted things done right. And when the company didn't listen, he didn't shout. He wrote it all down, locked the door behind him, and waited. He wasn't a liability. He was the ledger.